Well, good morning here on a Wednesday here in Hamilton. We are live from the Chatterbox studios. It's Off the Bench. I'm Reed Mouse, once again taking you through today's show. We got a fun show. I felt like the last few days were kind of really buttoned up for me. I'm not a buttoned up guy. I was wearing a polo. I planned out the show pretty much the entire way. And if you've been watching Off the Bench long enough, you know that I kind of like to fly by the seat of my pants. My wife knows that that's how I kind of live life. My coworkers know that's how I kind of go about it. I fly by the seat of my pants. So we'll rock and roll. And today we're going to be unbuttoning a little bit. We got a lot of segments on today's show. It's going to be a lot of fun. Stone Shields, per usual, in the producer's chair. Stone, good to see you again. Everyone loves the way that you wear your headphones during the show.
I know. I was getting picked on a little bit for that yesterday. I like to be able to hear you like you're next to me. That's why I got this one off, but then I also want to make sure we can hear you over here. I don't know. It's a weird little quirk. Maybe we'll switch it up at some point, but I kind of want to keep it going since everybody's kind of been picking on me for it.
Give us a teaser for the Stone Shield show today at 11.
Yeah, so typically, I think a lot of these shows, they love doing all the lists, right? And we've kind of stayed away from those lists on my show, but we're going to get some lists going on today's show. I've got my power rankings. You had yours yesterday. I have mine that look a little bit different. And then we've been through 3 weeks of the college football season. Joel Klatt, an incredible college football analyst, he has his top 10 highest performing quarterbacks in college this season. We're going to be reacting to that list. I think it's a pretty solid list from Klatt, but there's a couple of adjustments I would like to make. And also, there's been a lot of people nationally talking about, is Joe Burrow the next Andrew Luck? We'll start off my show talking about that.
I can't see. Everyone keeps talking about if Joe Burrow will do the same thing as Andrew Luck. And what Andrew Luck did, and I mean, you can't blame him for it. I just can't see it. Like, that is such a rare thing that has happened, that he is just like, I'm done getting beat up. I get it. And Joe Burrow has had almost more. He has had more injuries than Andrew Luck. But I just can't see that happen. I mean, it's a similar storyline, right? It's an elite quarterback going to a team, gets beat up for about 6 years, and what's going to happen next with his career? Will he retire? No, he's not going to retire. I can't see that happening. I could see him asking out of Cincinnati here coming soon. But Stone's show comes up at 11. We've got a mailbag. We opened up the DMs. For you guys, and we got a lot of questions coming from some loyal listeners. So we'll have the mailbag later on in the show. Stone's gonna have some headlines. We're gonna do around the league. I'm gonna ask some questions just about the NFL. As always, I like football. Baseball is my favorite sport, but for some reason it's easier to talk about the NFL just because of the product that it is. So we're going to be talking about the NFL quite a bit, but we will open up the show with the Cincinnati Reds. And I get it. You guys don't want to hear me talk about the Cincinnati Reds. I was the guy who sat right here about 3 years ago and did the Dear Reds fans bit, just basically trolling. And, if you get in our Discord, I tease Reds fans quite a bit. Obviously, I root for another team. You get on Twitter, same thing. I like to tease Nick Kirby, Trace Fowler, all of you guys. It's all in good fun. I hope you guys realize that when I do that. But here we are, 11 games to go. The Reds somehow scrapped their way right back into playoff contention. And just like it came, it went away. They are now down 3 games in the final wild card spot with 2 teams in front of them and 11 games to play. Stranger things have happened in the sport of baseball, but even though the season has been called dead in May, in June, in July, in August on this show, which is only 2 weeks old now, I think we can safely assume that the season is rightfully done. 11 games to play, playing tough teams going forward. You play the Chicago Cubs this weekend, and you play some division rivals next week. You got to make up 3 games in 11 games. And you got to jump over about 3 teams to do it. So the Reds season is done. And here's the thing. The Reds coming into the year projected by Fangraphs to win 73 games, projected by the sports books to win 78 games, and that's going to both. I mean, obviously they've already surpassed the Fangraphs expectations, the Zips projections, and it looks like they're going to surpass the betting odds, which is 78 games. But that being said, it still feels like a massive disappointment just because over the course of 162 games, and that's a bit that I don't even know if it's a bit. It's a thing that people say if you get in Chatterbox Reds, which is a phenomenal program, but you get in the chat and people go like, some people aren't made for 162. It's a marathon. It truly is. It's a long season, and you can get worked up with every single takeaway from every single game. One guy looks great on the mound one day and then looks like he can't get a single out the next day. There's one guy who you can't get out for 2 weeks, and then for a month straight, he can't do anything right. It is a marathon. There's ebbs and flows of every single season, but here we are again in Cincinnati, a town that I've said over and over again as someone who roots for another team, that nothing makes me happier in the summertime than when the Reds are good as a baseball fan. I mean that sincerely. Like, that's not a bit. I love it when my group texts, when my group chats are constantly talking about the Reds. I love it when you get on Twitter and everyone's talking about it. I love it when my dad calls me to talk about the Reds. As I've said time and time again, everyone that I know, care for, respect is a Reds fan. So there is a part of me, even though I like to mess with you guys, there is a part of me that always wants them to do well. And here we are at the end of the season once again, and it feels just kind of like, man, here we are again. Gonna miss the postseason. Haven't made the postseason since 2020, the COVID year, and in a full season, haven't made the postseason in over 10 years. They've had a couple times where they fought to the end, 2021, 2023, 2019, to a lesser extent, and now this year. And I wonder, because the Reds are exceeding kind of where they're projected to be, I wonder if it's just a culmination of things of just this entire city, right? It's the Reds bleeding, or it's the entire city bleeding into Reds fandom. Because I remember in this room in 2023, Paul Fritchner, who was on the show, one of the producers at the time, was talking about this city of Cincinnati and how for the first time in his life, for the first time in a lot of us that are, upper 20s, young 30s, everything had seemed to be kind of on the rails once again. Well, since the early 2010s, when the Bengals and the Reds were good at the exact same time. He mentioned how the Bengals had come off their best 2-year run in franchise history. Super Bowl, AFC Championship game with no signs of stopping, having one of the best quarterbacks in the league. The Reds at the time were hot off a 12-game win streak, first place in the National League Central on a season that they were projected to win 66 games. And you can go down to the college ranks. UC Bearcats were joining a big boy conference. They're joining the Big 12 that season. They had come off, prolonged success in the football program, and they had what they thought was a young, great coach in Wes Miller. Even Xavier, the small fandom that I hold to, coming off a Sweet 16 berth. Sean Miller, one of the best coaches in the sport, looked like he was here for the long haul. FC Cincinnati had the best player in the sport, had the best roster in the sport. In the MLS. And here we are, 2 years and some change later, and the Reds find themselves in the same mud that they've been in for the last decade. There are some bright spots. There's some. Sal Stewart looks fantastic. Looks like a true middle of the lineup bat. Ellie De La Cruz, though he had a bad year, I think we can all say that that's still a centerpiece that you can build a team around. The Bengals, in just the 2.5 years, have seen 3 injuries to our star quarterback, Joe Burrow. Bearcats football in shambles. Bearcats basketball hasn't made the tournament. Xavier, now on a new coach. And FCC, I'll be honest, I don't know what's going on with them. I don't know what's going on with them. But you got to wonder if it's kind of what you're feeling right now is just some of the mundane emotions that you felt about the Cincinnati Reds over the last decade, or if it's bleeding from else places. Now, I'll tell you, I still think that there is ways that you can take away in these last 11 games something positive out of the season. Because now you can firmly hang your hat up and go, all right, what can we do going forward? And there are some ways. Finish the season over 500. They've only done that 4 times. I think 3 times in the last 12 years. 4 if you count the COVID year. And you have an opportunity. The most wins that they've had, I believe, is like 83, 86, I mean, you get hot. You could have the most wins that you've had since 2014. 83 in 2021. Ellie De La Cruz. Man, is it the injury? He was at one point the most exciting young baseball player in this sport. And he's had a negative season. I think we can all say that. And there's a lingering injury there. There's some other things that have happened this year that you can kind of attribute to. But can he finish with 20 home runs and have another good year? He hasn't hit a home run in, 300? And he's hit one home run in the last 350 plate appearances. Can he get one more, get to 20? Make sure that the Reds at Great American Ballpark aren't left off the list of teams to hit 20 home runs. I think there's 3 teams right now that haven't hit 20 home runs, 2 of them in the NL Central, the Pittsburgh Pirates and the Cincinnati Reds. And I think the Cardinals have 1 guy that's hit 20 home runs. So the NL Central has just not got a whole lot of boppers. Can you continue to see some things from your young pitchers? Can you continue trending forward to where you're like, all right, this is going to be a team that's going to be focused on run prevention. Can we score some more runs? There are ways in which the Reds can go forward and kind of end it on a positive note. Maybe you don't want to hear that. Maybe it's just minutia at this point. But I'm a guy who always likes to put a positive spin on things. That's what you guys give me crap for. I always like to put a positive spin on things. And I'm not trying to dig the knife into your Reds fandom right now. I'm not. It's actually, once again, as the guy who trolls Reds fans, it's actually a lot more fun when you guys are good, because then it just feels like I'm being silly. When things are down, it feels like I'm being mean, and I don't like to go there. Stone, as a lifelong Reds fan, what are your emotions right now? As you know, once again, the season where just a week ago we were talking, man, is this going to happen? Is this Reds team going to get in the postseason? And now 11 games to go, they just couldn't seize an opportunity.
Yeah, I think my expectation coming into the year was pretty cut and dry. I was going to say season is a massive success if you make the postseason, and season is a massive failure if you do not. I know you were saying that it's over. It feels like it's basically just about over, but then again, over the course of the past couple of months, there's been some times where it's felt like it's basically over, so I'm not quite ready to write them off entirely. They do have a day game today against the Cardinals. They lose that. Maybe I'm ready to do it there at that point. But 3 games back, as you mentioned, several teams that they need to leapfrog in order to get into a position where they could make the postseason. But at the end of the day, just not enough offense is really the takeaway. And I know that's basic, but they didn't score enough runs to be competitive, especially in the National League with lots of really good baseball teams. So, when the season's over or when they're officially eliminated, we'll kind of, rehash exactly how we got to this point. But, yeah, I mean, it's pretty disappointing because the expectation, you bring Tito in, you have a lot of young talent, you have a great starting rotation, and it looks like yet again they're going to fall short, and that's incredibly frustrating.
Do you think that they've met your expectations as a fan, or do you think they've gone below? What were your expectations coming in this season? Was it to make the postseason?
That was my expectations. So, they've came a little bit, lower than that here at this point. I didn't think they were going to win the division. I didn't, think they were going to win a ton of games, but I thought they would be a few games over 500 right now, and obviously they're a few games behind that.
Yeah, and when you look at how this team is constructed, when you look at how Nick Kroll in the front office thought about this team was never going to win 90 games. Just simply wasn't. That wasn't how they were constructed. That was never in the cards. Unless, you pull what the Milwaukee Brewers did, which is unseen of, and maybe we should just get used to it because that's just kind of who they are right now. Did you see that, speaking of the Milwaukee Brewers, did you see that Pat Murphy, after they clinched a postseason spot, read a letter from Bob Uecker? Did you see this?
I did not, no.
So, see, I will tease the Milwaukee Brewers because this is actually absurd. Pat Murphy, head coach of the Milwaukee Brewers, when the Brewers clinched a postseason spot, pulled out and said, I've got a letter from the late Bob Uecker, the most famous man in Milwaukee Brewers. And he wrote this letter. It's a poignant message, and it kind of riled up the Brewers. Later came out, the letter wasn't from Bob Uecker. Like the Brewers put out this post about Pat Murphy reading this letter He's like, look at this letter. Look at our head coach reading this letter from the late, great Bob Uecker to the team. And then, like, the next tweet was like, oh, yeah, this actually wasn't from Bob Uecker. They were, like, just doing it for the bit? What? I don't get that at all. Don't understand that at all. But back to the point I was working on, which is the Reds were never projected to win 90. They weren't going to win 90 games unless, you're getting a great season from Matt McClain, Ellie Daly, like, everyone's exceeding expectations. And I asked this last year when the Reds, when the final wild card spot was like 88 wins. It's like, does it make you feel any better that the Reds were probably never going to get it? And they're like, say, yeah. Looks like the final wild card spot is going to be probably about 83, 84 wins. So it was definitely obtainable. It was definitely obtainable if the Reds had a few things fall their way. So I don't know how that makes you feel. I don't know if that makes it any worse, any better. I know last year I did ask Trace. I was like, does it make you feel better? And he's like, yes, it does make me feel better because the Reds were never going to win 90 games. But there's pretty clearly a shift that needs to happen in the organization about how they can formulate runs. You see teams like the New York Yankees, they get a lot of left-handed power, or they get guys that hit the ball to the right side of the field because they know on that short porch it's gonna work out for them. Same with the Houston Astros. They get guys like Isaac Paredes that can exploit the Crawford boxes. Can the Reds figure out a way to exploit their field? Chicago Cubs do it with their Windy City. They get fly ball pitchers, guys like Shota Imanaga, who plays well when the wind's blowing in, but doesn't play well when the wind's not blowing in. So you got to figure out a way as an organization to exploit where you're going to play for 81 games, which obviously is the tinderbox that is Great American Ballpark, Great American Small Park, as we sometimes call it. But the Reds, they'll go again today. We've written them off 4 or 5 times now. Maybe they'll rip off 5 straight wins, and then we're looking into the final week, and they're like, all right, can you win this? Hopefully it's not 5 straight wins because I think the Chicago Cubs come to town this weekend, and I'll be there on Thursday. It's a Bark in the Park night. Get to take my doggos, which is kind of a fun thing. All right, Stone, I asked you to come up with some headlines. So without further ado, we'll take it over to Stone's headlines.
All right, so Monday night, obviously, we had 2 football games in the National Football League. I'm in a spot, as I talked about on my show yesterday, I don't love the doubleheader on Monday night, but that's probably a conversation for a different day. But Baker Mayfield was sensational late in the ball game once again. Didn't exactly light up the stat sheet, 215 yards, 2 touchdowns, but did have yet another game-winning drive. My question to you, Reed, is this. Is Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay in the perfect spot to succeed?
Yes. I saw some national news people or some national commentators talking about this. And based off Baker's personality, we saw this in Oklahoma where, he's planting the field in the middle of the horseshoe. We saw this in Cleveland where he pretty clearly has a big, I don't want to call it cocky, but I think that's not too far off the mark, where he's got this big personality. He feeds off confidence. He plays off confidence. And when you're playing in a city like Cleveland that is already behind the 8 ball, and I think they're a little insecure as a fan base, as the media, as a team, that every little thing can just kind of weigh on you. And they put a little too much pressure on Baker that even though he won a playoff game for the Cleveland Browns in his 3rd year, things can just get a little heavy and they can kind of snowball and it can kind of get chaotic. You go down to Tampa, you go down to Florida, where sports, unlike here in the Midwest, aren't the number one thing that people worry about. They've got this thing called the beach. They've got warm weather. They can go golfing. There's other things to do. And yeah, Tampa Bay Buccaneers have a pretty good fan base, a loyal fan base, and that's a growing city. But you don't have to worry about constantly being in the media, and everything that you say isn't picked apart. You're not deemed the savior of a franchise. In fact, you're taking over a franchise that's won 2 Super Bowls in the last 25 years. You're taking over a franchise that is always kind of been really well constructed with a good line, good weapons. They just, for whatever reason, haven't very frequently gotten the quarterback right. But here they are, back-to-back spots where they've gotten a free agent quarterback, and it's gone pretty well. Now, the first one was the greatest of all time, Tom Brady, and the second one is obviously Baker Mayfield. So in short, or I guess in long, Yeah, I think Baker Mayfield's in a really great spot for him to continue to succeed, to where the pressure's low. He can be boisterous. He can be confident. He's got a good roster. He's got people that can build around him. And I think, I'll tell you what, Baker Mayfield's contract's up at the end of this year. One of the better contracts in NFL in the last decade is Baker Mayfield. What was it, 3 years, $70 million or something like that? 3 years, $75 million, however it's long that he's been there. He's going to get paid. He's going to get himself a big contract. I don't know how long it'll be, but he's going to be in the $50 million a year because he's earned that. Baker Mayfield is a guy, now that he's no longer in Cleveland, that it's very easy to root for. So in short, yes.
Yeah, I totally agree, too. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's all about fit, right? Where guys, end up. The fit wasn't great in Cleveland, right? That whole town, as you mentioned, kind of has a chip on its shoulder. And that's certainly what Baker had coming into the league. And if you remember early on in Cleveland, he would often get all ticked off at these reporters and get in these back and forths with these reporters as a young player, and he really has matured as he's gone through in his career. And like you said, Tampa is a spot where great place to live, right? But football not necessarily the number one thing. It's a very laid-back community. It's a very older, I guess, community there as well. And I think he's landed completely on his feet, and there really is no better spot for him than in Tampa Bay. And kind of a sneaky team that you could be looking at that I'm not going to say Super Bowl necessarily, but kind of a conference championship team in my opinion at this point.
Before we get to the next headline, Haro asked the question, did the return of off the bench curse both Cincy franchises? And to that I say no, because long before we returned here on off the bench, this city had not been doing well athletically. So no, I will not say that. But it is a coincidence that the same week that off the bench comes back, Joe Burrow gets hurt and the Reds playoff hopes are dead. So I'd say no, because there's a long list of evidence to contradict your take there. All right, headlines.
Yeah, pure coincidence there on that one. Second headline for you, Reed. 20 games ago, the Los Angeles Chargers were a total mess. One of the worst defenses in the National Football League. Insert Jim Harbaugh, insert Jesse Minter, and they really have completely turned things around. They look really big, fast, physical, strong defensively. Herbert finally looks healthy, and I think this is probably the best version of Justin Herbert we have seen in the National Football League. Joe Alt, their young tackle, he is sensational, hasn't given up a sack or a pressure yet this season. My question for you is this: are the Chargers can they be viewed as legitimate Super Bowl contenders?
No, I will not put them in true Super Bowl contenders. I think that I think that Jim Harbaugh, though he hasn't had the same success that a Nick Saban, Bill Belichick, Andy Reid, so maybe he doesn't deserve to be in the same category, but I can't think of a better guy. Like, I can't think of a better football coach. Like, everywhere he's gone, he's taken over a dumpster fire and won almost immediately. And Justin Herbert, say what you want about his success in the postseason, say what you want about his success as, just his entire career. Now here in year 6, same year that Joe Burrow came into the league. When you watch him play and he's playing, few quarterbacks are prettier to watch. Just the way he looked, like when you close your eyes and you envision what an All-American, an elite quarterback looks like. It's Justin Herbert with the big arm, 6'5", big frame. It just looks pretty when he plays. That being said, I don't think that they have the playmakers. I know that that's something that they've stressed on Keenan Allen, something that about as reliable of a wide receiver as you can ask for, Keenan Allen. And I know that they get Najee Harris and get a first-round running back and all these things. I don't know if they have the playmakers to get there. Obviously, the first thing is the trenches, and they've lost Rashawn Slater. Joe Alt's looking good over on the left tackle, but they've lost Rashawn Slater. Looks like they're going to lose Khalil Mack for a little bit of time, but he looks like he'll probably be back towards the postseason. No, I think there's teams in the AFC that are just more experienced, farther ahead than the Chargers. So no, I'm not putting them as Super Bowl contenders.
I had to push back on that a little bit, Reader. Look, I'm not going to put them up there with Buffalo and Baltimore, right? And obviously, the Chiefs are 0-2, but you and I are both on the same page there that they're going to be fine, right? The Chiefs are going to make the playoffs. Maybe they don't win the division, but they're going to find a way to get to the postseason. But as far as lack of weaponry goes, they got Ladd McConkey, right? He's obviously not a big-time, big receiver, but he's a catch machine. He gets a ton of catches. He's shifty, has that short area quickness. Quentin Johnston, a former top-of-the-line pick who looked like he was a bust for several years, but now he's offering some explosives down the field. Keenan Allen, one of the most underrated players of my generation, and just a third-down go-to for Justin Herbert. So I still think the pieces are in place, and that defense is real, man.
Yeah, no doubt.
Is real.
No doubt about it. Jesse Minter, where did he go to college?
Well, he coached at Michigan. Did he go there?
He did not go there locally. He went to a local college. You want to guess?
Huh.
Mount St. Joseph University.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
wow.
He's a Lion. Jesse Minter, HCAC. D3 guy. So, yeah.
There you go. All right, moving on to our third one here today. So a lot has been made about the Chicago Bears. Obviously, a new head coach, Ben Johnson. Caleb Williams goes into year 2. They are 0-2 as far as their start to the season goes. Got blown out by Detroit in a very ugly game for them defensively. My question is this. How is that marriage going to work for Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson? Can this thing work out, or are we going to find ourselves in a position where Chicago is looking for a new quarterback here sooner rather than later?
I was peeking at one of the mailbags. I think that is a question in one of the mailbags, but I'll briefly touch it here, and we'll revisit it once the mailbag comes out. Caleb Williams is as talented as a quarterback as the National Football League has seen. Point blank. Like, you can't deny the talent there. The arm strength, the athletic ability, all of that is as talented as it comes. Ben Johnson seems to be one of the better offensive minds that we've ever seen. Now, he had a lot of toys up there in Detroit, but it's seldom that we've seen a guy be able to turn down jobs. And does Ben Johnson regret probably turning down the Commander's job when he did? Probably. But he accepted this job in Chicago because of the talent that Caleb Williams had. And even though it's incredibly apparent that this year's a wash, just based off how the first 2 games went, and we all know the statistics on starting 0-2 and making the postseason. It's incredibly hard to do. The Chiefs will probably do it this year. The Bengals did it back in 2022, but it's like 8% of the teams that start 0-2 make the postseason. Even though this year is likely a wash, I think that you've just got to be patient, because I think you've kind of put all your eggs in the basket already. You can't keep rotating around, whether it be a head coach or quarterback. Like, you just kind of got to let it play out for, I'm not even kidding you, like 4 years, 3-4 years. So that's my short answer, and I think we're going to revisit it later on here.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, when you have a quarterback that you take first overall, right, you got to give him a little bit of a chance, right? It hasn't been pretty to start. There's going to be some bumps in the roads. I think a lot of people expected to see more improvement from year 1 to year 2. He's so reliant on the spectacular, can't necessarily win from within the pocket, and I think that's certainly concerning for Chicago. I don't personally think it's going to work, but we are way too close or way too far away from the time where you would sit there and say, oh, let's take a look at Tyson Bagent and see what he can do as the quarterback. That's not going to happen anytime soon. I know some people, it's a noisy city in Chicago, right? Obviously, lots of people, big market, talking about the Bears at all times, and they haven't certainly lived up to their expectations to this point through a couple of weeks, but you got to give it some time when you're talking about Caleb Williams.
So I think it's sometimes tired. I feel like everyone feels like they're a cursed city when you have a fan base. Like, we feel that here in Cincinnati because there hasn't been a whole lot to celebrate, but there are certainly worse places to be than Cincinnati. Look no further than the city of Chicago. Even though the Cubs look really good, they're likely going to clinch the postseason either today or tomorrow. But the Chicago Bulls have been terrible now for 30 years. They had one decent run with Derrick Rose and Joakim Noah and Carlos Boozer in the late 2000s. The Bears, they did make a postseason with did make a Super Bowl with Rex Grossman back in 2006, but other than that, hasn't been good. They've never had a 4,000-yard passing quarterback. The Blackhawks have had the worst record in the NHL for the last 4 years, and the White Sox won 100 games back in 2001, and now they are the worst team. They've been the worst run team now for the last 4 years. So it could be worse. Just remember that, guys. It could be worse than here in Cincinnati. Maybe that doesn't make you feel any better, but makes me feel a little bit better.
We'll transition here to the college game here for our final
My
headline
favorite.
today.
My
Yes,
favorite.
right.
I'm a big college
right.
football guy.
Yeah. We'll get you turned around there, Reed. No, don't worry about that. But Brian Kelly had some things to say after LSU beat Florida over the weekend 20-10. We've got a soundbite for you guys, and we'll play that right now.
Sessions, but what are you seeing with your offense?
Stop. Really? Is that the first question? We won the game 20-10. Try another question. What do you want me to tell you? I just laid it out for you. We played the game to win the game. We played the game to win the game.
All right. How about third down then? What is going on with third down?
It's one game. Last game, we were great on third down. You're looking at this from the wrong perspective. LSU won the football game. Won the game. I don't know what you want from me. What do you want? You want us to win 70-0 against Florida to keep you happy?
No, I think people want to know why you can't run the ball, quite honestly.
We can run the ball. Did you see the last play of the game? That's all you need. You just need one. There's ridiculous questions. And I'm getting tired of it. That football team just worked their tail off to get an SEC win, and you want to know what's wrong. You know what? You're spoiled. You're spoiled. This team is 17-1 at night. 17-1. Give them some respect. How about that? Give them some respect instead of micro-analyzing every little thing. This is ridiculous. For a group of seasoned reporters, that kind of question is so out of line.
Brian Kelly, as I've never been the biggest Brian Kelly guy ever, Reed, and I've seen that clip several times, and it's just got me shaking my head. What say you?
So there's two things you can say about Brian Kelly that I think at this point are undeniable to say. The first is that Brian Kelly wins football games. He does. He genuinely does. He took over Notre Dame that hadn't been good for 20 years and won a lot of games. They never won the big game, but they won a lot of games. Here in Cincinnati, took Cincinnati football once again sub 500 in their history, and he took them to 2 BCS games with Tony Pike. He's gone down there to LSU, and it's been up and down, but they look like one of the best teams in college football this year, and it wouldn't surprise anybody. Maybe it would, but it wouldn't surprise me if they're playing for a national championship come year. That being said, the other thing you can't say about Brian Kelly is that, by all accounts, just not a good human being. Not a good human being. You talk with people that were around Cincinnati when he was here in town, and they're like, man, he wasn't fun to be around, or he didn't treat me right, or anything. There's a story that I heard. I don't know if you've heard this story, Stone, but Brian Kelly, I guess, used to have this big party every year. He used to have this big party up there in Notre Dame. Maybe he still does it down at LSU, where he'd bring a bunch of people in. They get catered, like do it big time. When you got a lot of money, every once in a while you can throw a heck of a shindig where it's catered and you got bartenders, and it's not just like, hey, you want to get together and watch. Threw a big party up there in South Bend, and he calls all of his GAs because obviously the football staff has a bunch of graduate assistants because there's dozens and dozens of people. And obviously this party had been rumored, and it's like a big deal to get invited to this party. And he calls them up, and he's like, hey, I need your guys' help for this party. And they're like, oh, yeah, you kidding me? Probably 23 years old, going to go hang with millionaires and people in the football industry. And they're like, man, what a great opportunity for me to network with some people, some powerful people here at Notre Dame, here in the football industry. What an opportunity it is for me just to be 23 and get to live it big for a night. And what did Brian Kelly have those graduate assistants do? He wasn't inviting them to the party. He had them come shovel his driveway because it snowed in South Bend that day, the same day as the party, and told them to leave. So they came, shoveled his driveway, they left, didn't get to go to this big party, which just, I guess, speaks to the character of Brian Kelly. Seems like one of the least genuine people in sports, maybe even in the world. And as the older I grow, 29 years old, haven't seen a whole lot of life, but I've seen some of life, met a lot of people. The older I get, the number one trait that I like in people is authenticity. Sometimes you just meet somebody and you're just like, that seems like a genuine dude. That seems like a genuine person. And even if you're an MFer, right? Even if you're just snarling all the time, don't see anything good out of life, you just grinning, just mean mugging life. Even those people, you find them, they're just mean to you. You respect it because that's who they are. They're not gonna fake. They're not gonna turn around and smile to me, turn around and say something bad about me. Genuine authenticity is the number one thing I look for. And Brian Kelly by far seems like one of the least authentic people I've ever. But it's that. What a weird clip. What a weird clip. I don't know what your takeaway was from that.
Yeah, I think you could make the argument that, he's sticking up for his team, he's protecting his team. That was the first question that was asked. They're on the road, certainly against a team that has underperformed for several years under Billy Napier, but still a solid win on the road in the SEC, and that's the first question. I could see why it would set him off a little bit, but just to go on that tirade for as long as he did, I mean, that clip was like a 90-second, rant from Brian Kelly, and he's just kind of a clown, man, and he always has been, to be completely honest with you. I picked LSU to win the national championship before the season. I'm not going to bail off that pick because of this interview, but I'm certainly not excited about it. I just think, there's so many. Brian Kelly is viewed as one of the best coaches in college football, but he's never really been able to get over the hump and really compete for a national title. At Notre Dame, he got there once with Everett Golson and then just got dismantled by Nick Saban in Alabama. But I think there's just some things fundamentally that he does that makes me not really take him seriously, and this is just yet the latest example.
Yeah. That's LSU, me and my friends have always talked about this as a job for Brian Kelly. And if they win the national championship, I don't even know how to compare LSU to any other professional sports team. I do have a comparison for them because it seemed like every coach that goes there wins a national championship, but then has just meandering success, and all of a sudden they just put together the best team ever. And maybe that's what LSU is this year. Nick Saban did that. Coach O did that. It's just wild that LSU seems like every 5 years. You know what they remind me of? They remind me of the Boston Red Sox in this decade or in this century, to where they win in 04, 05, 06, not very good. 07, best team. Win the World Series. Then they don't make the postseason for a couple years. They win in 13 and their team looks unstoppable. And then they're kind of bad. And then 2018 happens and they might be the best team that we've seen this century. That's kind of what LSU football is to me. It's just they won't be good. They're not a perennial contender, but 1 out of 5 years, they'll just look like the best team you've ever seen, and then they'll win the championship, and then they'll go back down to meandering success. So we'll see if they get it done here. All right, we got ad reads. That was the final headline, right?
That was.
All right, so we'll go to our ad reads, which I didn't get to yesterday. And then we got a mailbag. Thank you so much for everyone that mailed in questions to us. We really do appreciate all the mail-in questions. So the Job Center is now hiring. Start working fast with weekly pay, flexible shifts, and great opportunities at top local employers. Apply in person at any location across 12 states or online at thejobcenter.com. Light up your events with Queen City Screens. Our cutting-edge LED video boards deliver vibrant visuals and crystal clear displays for any occasion. From concert to corporate events, we've got you covered. Visit queencityscreens.com to rent your LED solution today. Queen City Screens, where brilliance meets impact. We got about 20 minutes left here on Off the Bench before we get to the Stone Shield Show. Some people call Off the Bench the lead-in show for the Stone Shield Show. That's where the money. Sometimes you got the lead-in, the pregame show for Monday Night Football. That's what Off the Bench is for my main man, Stone Shields. But we did have some people mail in some questions. We opened up the DMs and people brought in the questions. So what's our first question from our loyal viewers, and who's it from?
All right, our first question here today is from Everett Henry, who is definitely fits the description of a loyal viewer, always in the comment section, always in the live chat. He says, "Dear Off the Bench, the Cincinnati Bengals are running me through a gamut of emotions since I could ever remember, from the pain of the Steelers' playoff loss to the joy of Evan McPherson, whose right leg is a weapon of mass destruction, kicking the game-winning field goal to send our Bengals to the Super Bowl. At one time, I thought the Bengals were going to win multiple Super Bowls with Joe Burrow, but now I'm not so sure. Can you help me find cause for optimism in this town? P.S. I love the golf content from Trace.
Oh, yeah, the golf content is really good, and Everett has been very supportive of the golf content. So, Everett, you're wondering if there is any reason to be optimistic about the Bengals going forward. Yeah, they're 2-0. If you want the optimistic spin, I've done this now, and this is the day 3 of this. Jake Browning's 5-3 as a quarterback for the Cincinnati Bengals. Can he bridge the 3-month gap? Not exactly what you want out of a backup quarterback, but can you bridge a 3-month gap to keep the Bengals around playoff contention? And hopefully Joe Burrow's surgery is a success. Hopefully rehabbing's a success, and he comes back ready to play in the middle of December. There is cause for optimism. I talked to Stone on Monday, and that's when it kind of hit him, this Joe Burrow news. It's hitting me right now, if I'm being honest with it. Like, I just started thinking, man, what if we do lose this Sunday? Then it feels like the Monday Night Football game in Denver is a must-win because I don't see a whole lot of wins for the next few weeks after that between playing the Detroit Lions and playing the Green Bay Packers and just kind of a really tough stretch after that. So the cause for optimism is this. They're 2-0. They have 3 games at the end of the season that should be wins. That's 5 wins. Can we get 5 and 7 from the other 12 with Jake Browning and or a healthy Joe Burrow if he comes back? And if we get in the postseason, that's all it takes, baby. Let Joe cook in the postseason. So that's the only optimism I can find. Hopefully it finds you. Next mailbag question.
Next mailbag question is from a player formerly known as Mouse Cop. Dear OTB, I'm a diehard Chicago Bears and Cleveland Browns fan. Is
That's
that
a double
legal?
whammy. That's a double whammy.
You can be a diehard fan of 2 professional football teams.
He is. He dies hard with both those squads.
Right. Fair play. Fair play, Mouse Cop. My Sundays revolve around watching these 2 teams continue to tear up the NFL, just as they have my entire life.
They have done that.
Yes.
No doubt about it.
That being said, Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson haven't had the marriage I would have hoped for. Do you think the structured style of the Ben Johnson offense and the ad-lib ability of Caleb Williams jives? Hashtag Wes Miller the GOAT. We just kind of brought that up actually during our headline segment. Now we're kind of circling it back to it here with Mouse Cop's question. What is your response, reader?
I didn't. Wes Miller to go. Did not expect that from a player formerly known as Mouse Cop. He was also talking yesterday about how there's going to be a cookout in Clifton in 2026 that he's really excited for. That dude's just revolving around the Clifton scene. Yeah, I don't. It's pretty clear that Ben Johnson's offense is very on script. You see this with like Kyle Shanahan. Like Kyle Shanahan has never had an overly talented quarterback between Jimmy Garoppolo and Brock Purdy and now Mac Jones. And he's never been an overly talented, but they're able to succeed because they just run their play. Same with Ben Johnson. Jared Goff's a really good quarterback. He's not overly talented, and it seemed like they worked best when, hey, Jared Goff, this is the play, run the play. Caleb Williams, kind of an ad-libber, right? He kind of likes to play his style of offense where he just it's like jazz almost, right? Ben Johnson doesn't call it jazz offense. He doesn't. Just run the play and get it. But I said this earlier, Ben Johnson chose to go to Chicago because he saw the talent that was there. He saw the talent that was there at the quarterback position. I think it's going to take a while. I don't like what I'm seeing from just kind of their personalities meshing. It doesn't seem like their personalities are meshing very well. Obviously, the Ben Johnson quotes about him, talking about Tyson Bagent and the backup quarterback glowing about him seemed a little weird. It's like, what are you doing here? Like, you should be gassing up your starting quarterback, not your backup quarterback. But we'll continue to see. I don't think Caleb Williams played necessarily bad this past Sunday. I think the Bears just might be bad. It's 2 weeks into the season. We'll see. Give it time. Give it time. I know timelines on quarterbacks have shrunk over the last decade. You used to get like 3 years as a starting quarterback. Now it seems like you get a year and a half. You get like by Thanksgiving in year 2. I think it's going to take more time. He's essentially learning a new system in his second year as a time. I think it's going to work out. I think Ben Johnson's a great mind. I think Caleb Williams is a fantastic talent. I think it's going to work out.
All right, question number 3 here from Mark Fetters. Dear Reed Stone and maybe, just maybe, Trace Cameron Fowler. Ellie De La Cruz graded out as one of the best shortstops in the league in 2024. This year has been one of the worst. Knowing that shortstop is a premium position and understanding how valuable defense and run prevention is for the Reds going forward, do you see him moving positions? Also, where are my pants?
Yeah, Mark's always trying to find his pants. Put on those pants, Mark. Here's the thing about Ellie De La Cruz. Leads the league in errors, right? He's in the bottom 10% for starting shortstops in outs above average, defensive runs saved. It hasn't been good this year at shortstop. But in years past, we saw him, grade very highly. The errors were always there, but he was making plays that few other shortstops in the league, if any other shortstops in the league, can make. I don't think you move Ellie De La Cruz yet. You give him one more year at shortstop because we've now seen one good year, one terrible year. What are we seeing? Can he get that quad healthy? Can he play another year and see if we get him back? I would say this, if the Reds had a solution there, like if they had someone ready to go at shortstop, like let's say Matt McClain was coming up through the ranks, who was a shortstop in college and, was a great player and everything like that. He's ready to play. Let's just plug and play him. I think then you'd move Ellie De La Cruz, but the heir apparent isn't there. You don't know who can play. It's not like they can just, we got this guy. We'll just plug him in and we'll move Ellie out to right field. He can just worry about hitting and putting more power into the bat and not have to worry about playing shortstop. So, in short, you give him one more year and you start looking, I think you start thinking about it. We've got to get somebody at the shortstop position, whether it be in free agency, and it's not like those guys typically are very expensive. You're going to have to get kind of a stopgap, or you're going to have to get a defensive specialist at shortstop that isn't going to help the problem with this team, which is offense. So you give him another year, but if it's next year's as bad as it was this year or anywhere near that, then I think you shift him out into right field.
Final question from our good friend Alex Wallace. Second to last question from Alex Wallace. Dear Chatterbox Sports, in my opinion, the tush push is a disgrace to televised sports. When the ultimate goal is put on an entertaining product, the tush push continues to be a drag and borderline unwatchable. Do you see a world in which the NFL will ban the play? Also, this November, get out to the polls. A blue wave is coming.
Did not see that coming from Alex Wallace. Did not. Politics here on Off the Bench. Did not see that. No one knows my politics. They obviously, this past offseason, talked about the tush push. That was something that was in the meetings from the ownership group, and they eventually agreed, all right, we'll continue to run this play. We'll continue to have this play. I will tell you, as a fan of the NFL, horrendous. Golly, is it boring. It is genuinely terrible to watch. It makes when the Eagles play, I don't want to call it unwatchable, but it makes it so much less fun on those third and fourth down, because that is oftentimes when you're watching a game like, big play here, big play. It's 4th and 1. You're just like, okay, whatever. And the big pushback that I've always gotten about, that saying like it's not fun is tough luck. You can run it. You don't run it as well as we do. We can run the play. You cannot. And that's a fair argument, right? If you shouldn't be punished for doing something better than everybody else. Other teams have tried this tush push, and it's just not as good, whether it be because their quarterback isn't as strong. Have you watched an Eagles game without them bringing up how much Jalen Hurts squats? It's like watching a show of Off the Bench without me bringing up that my dad was a coach or that I played baseball at one point. Like it's just inevitable. But I think they finally started to see a way in which they can ban it. Not to put on a conspiracy hat here, but it was clear that there was, a false start from the Eagles. And you go back and watch older plays, and they've been doing this a lot. And do the referees in Eagles games get a push from Roger Goodell, who I assume wants to ban it because he's always proactive as a commissioner in wanting to put the best, most entertainment-friendly product out on the field to go like, hey, can we start throwing flags on that tush push? Can you just hey, 3rd and 1, boom. false start, offsides, whatever you need to do. All right, now it's 3rd and 6, and they got to run a different play. And they just kind of negate it that way. But I do think that this will probably be the final year of the tush push because I think it is wearing on all spectators, being like, man, this is just not fun whatsoever to watch. I cannot continue to watch this sport. It's 3rd and 1. It's not fun. 4th and 1. It's not, even if you stop it one time, you can't stop it twice. And for the people that go like, it's a legal play. It's a legal play. You can't ban a legal play. There was, and I can't confirm if this is true. I might have gotten that Brian Kelly story wrong earlier, by the way. That might have been Nick Saban. I don't know. But there's a story, and I can't confirm if this is true. I know that they, in the NBA, when Wilt Chamberlain played, he used to just swat balls out of the air all the time, and then they're like, all right, you can't do that. It's goaltending. So they changed the rule because of this unique talent that was Wilt Chamberlain. I recently heard that they had to change the free throw rule for Wilt Chamberlain because he would just dunk free throws. You just jump from you just get a run start, jump from the free throw line and dunk it. And they're like, well, you can't do that anymore. It's illegal. So it's not like we've seen rules changed in sports to combat one person dominating. Famously in 1968 in baseball, they had to lower the baseball mound because Bob Gibson had like a 1.16 ERA through like 24 shutouts in one season. They're like, okay, we can't keep doing this. We got to change the rules. So while it is unfair, it's probably not fair for the Eagles that they have this unique talent. They have this unique play that no one else can seemingly run as well as they can. Sometimes you just got to do something for the greater good of the sport, and that is you got to ban the play.
Final mailbag question here today from Molly. Dear Yahoos from Hamilton, Tom Brady was seen in the coach's box with a headset on during the Raiders game. With the access that broadcasters get during the week of games, does this seem like a conflict of interest for Tom Brady, the Raiders, and the NFL? P.S. Tom is very hot.
Yeah, Molly, I thought you were a Joey Votto guy. Joey Votto gal, my bad. Not a Tom Brady. Yeah, it's Tom. I don't know how that plays out. I don't know how that finishes. I don't know how this whole situation kind of unveils itself. Because when you are a broadcaster, you get to meet up with coaches, owners, players. You get to kind of have access to the team. And then they show him and this was a big story when he first took over as minor ownership stake for the Raiders. They were like, hey, are we going to allow you to broadcast games and kind of have insight to how a team runs itself? Maybe teams just shun Tom Brady and don't give him any insight to the team whatsoever if he's going to continue to be up in the booth for the Raiders games. Tom Brady's never been one to follow the rules. Bill got a lot of flack for breaking some rules. I think Tom was breaking some rules too. He was a part of it there. So I just don't think they can let it happen. He's either got to give up, and I genuinely believe that he's either got to not be a broadcaster, or he can't have ownership in the Raiders. He can't do both. Because if they start shunning him out of locker rooms and not letting him talk to coaches, then he's not going to be doing his job well as a broadcaster, a job that Fox is giving him $1/3 billion to do over the next 10 years, $375 million. Or he can't do the job well. But you also can't have him asking questions and then reporting back to the Raiders and going like, hey, I heard so-and-so is doing this. Hey, they don't feel really confident about their safety. Hey, they don't feel like maybe we can exploit that. Like, it seems like a conflict of interest that I'm just not sure is going to play out well. Like one thing's going to have to come. Either he's going to have to give up his broadcasting duties or he's going to have to give up his ownership stake. Do I think either one of those things are going to happen? No, I think it's just going to continue going on, and we're just going to forget about this in a week. But it just doesn't seem fair. Doesn't seem fair to me. All right. Well, we went through 56 minutes here on Off the Bench. Thank you guys for those mailbags. Obviously, we had some fun with you guys. Thank you for being here. All those questions were great. We got through another hour. I think Trey should be back tomorrow. think Trey should be back tomorrow. But regardless, Cincinnati Bengals, it's starting to weigh on me a little bit. This Sunday, 1 p, Covington, Kentucky. Smoke Justice. We'll actually be live about 12:30. Maybe even a little before that. We'll be doing a live watch-along. My plan is as follows. If you guys have watched the watch-along streams, you've known that for the last 2 weeks we've done a pregame show that I was a part of, and then I did the watch-along, and we'd shift it to the studio, which is just Craig Sandlin and either Mike Hart or Andrew Collinsworth. Maybe it'll be Casey. Maybe it'll be Stone some weeks for the halftime and post-game show, and I would do the watch-along. The plan is this week that I will do the pregame show with some guests up there, the halftime show, and the postgame show. And the watch-along will be done by Craig Sandlin with, we'll have a camera live on, kind of picture-in-picture. So you see Craig, but you'll also see the bar kind of celebrating. Hopefully those aren't wildly off in terms of like Craig's way in front and we're way behind or whatever. Hopefully we're kind of matched up in that regard, and you can kind of watch how we're reacting as Craig is reacting. But it's going to be a lot of fun. Smoke Justice will be giving out a Joe Burrow jersey. We'll be giving out a Joe Burrow jersey to one of the lucky fans or one of the people that come to the show this Sunday. So please, we really would appreciate if you came out. I love meeting all you guys, talking with you. It's one of the joys of this job. So we'll have some fun. We'll drink a bourbon. We'll cheer on Jake Browning as he goes up to Minnesota and takes on Carson Wentz. Zach Taylor, man, it feels like I look at that game and you go, all right, where are we better than them at? Are we better than them at head coach? No. Offensive line, probably not. Defensive line, I don't know. Secondary, I don't know. Even skill positions seems about on par. It's not too far. But we're only 2.5-point underdogs, and Jake Browning's 5-3 as a starting quarterback. And so we'll see what happens. We got to win one of the next 2 games. Got to win either in Denver or in Minnesota. We win them both. Man, what a start to the season that'd be. 4-0, 3 of the games on the road, with 2 of the games on the road with a backup quarterback and starting 4-0. And we can start talking about this Bengals team as how serious are they in the AFC. But we'll get to that another time. Stone, thank you so much for carrying a big load on the show today.
Of course.
We'll talk about the Bengals and Vikings. We'll talk about the Reds tomorrow here on Off the Bench. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you around.
All right, here we go. Welcome into the Stone Shield Show here on Wednesday, September 17th. Appreciate everybody sticking around from off the bench to join us here on today's show. As always, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you have not done so already. We will be live here at the channel Monday through Friday, 11 o'clock in the morning to noon. My show, Off the Bench, with Reed Mouse, Trace Fowler, and others from 10 in the morning to 11 in the morning. We've had some pretty good viewership here through the first couple of weeks of this show. Obviously looking to grow that there as well. So if you have time, would invite you to tune in live weekdays. 10 to noon is our programming here at Chatterbox Sports. And then also the podcast will go up wherever you get your podcasts. That will go up about 15 minutes after we conclude here at the Stone Shield Show around 12 o'clock. Also, there will be clips from YouTube that go out on YouTube as videos on demand. So that certainly is very interesting as well. If you are unable to reach us with our live shows, you can see some of the segments there that are posted on YouTube as the day progresses into the evening. Also some clips on social media. Follow me on Twitter at StoneShields_, as you can see there on the top right hand corner of your screen. That is my Twitter. And also follow Chatterbox Sports on Twitter as well, because they will have a bunch of clips from the show. But as far as what is on tap for today's show, there's been a lot of people nationally discussing whether or not Joe Burrow could be the next Andrew Luck. There are some numbers that we're going to break down here on today's show that kind of are a little bit concerning. Absolutely no doubt about that. As it relates to Joe Burrow and Andrew Luck, we will break down those numbers, and I'll also let you guys know why I don't believe that is going to be the case with Joe Burrow. Also on today's show, we're going to be breaking down my power rankings. Reed had his yesterday on Off the Bench on Tuesday. A lot of people do them on Tuesday, but if Reed's going to be doing his on Tuesday with Off the Bench, we don't want to hit you with a double whammy necessarily and do them both days. So I'll probably do mine on Wednesday. I'm not a big lists guy. I know a lot of people that have these shows like to break down a ton of lists. Lists are very, very fun. Let's be very clear about that. But I think sometimes you can get into probably doing a little bit too many lists, too many rankings, what have you. But we are going to be doing another one here on today's show. We'll have my power rankings, top 10 teams in the NFL through 2 weeks. We got a new number one, spoiler alert there. And also Joel Klatt, who is a college football analyst for Fox Sports. He broke down his top 10 quarterbacks through 3 weeks in the college football season. He did it prior to week 1, and there's been a total shift as far as the guys that are on this list for Joel Klatt. We'll be breaking down his list. I'll be reacting to it and a couple of minor tweaks that I would make to his list there as well. Also, the Kansas City Chiefs have started out 0-2. When you look at the numbers, teams that start the season 0-2 do not do a good job of making the postseason. That's just kind of the reality of the situation. However, last year, Baltimore certainly started out 0-2. I believe the Los Angeles Rams also started out 0-2 last year as well. So there are some teams of recent memory that have been able to do it. I think Kansas City's going to be just fine. Are they going to win the West? Are they going to beat the Chargers and the Broncos? I don't know about that, but they are going to find their way in the postseason. I would be flat out shocked if they did not. So we'll spend some time talking about Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, and the Kansas City Chiefs. Also, the Reds lost last night against the St. Louis Cardinals on the road. That series is now tied 1-1, and obviously the Reds just got swept prior to that in Sacramento by the Athletics. Reed was saying off the bench he believes it is officially over for Cincinnati. I'm a little bit hesitant to go that far because over the course of the past couple of months, even dating all the way back to July, there were series where, they would lose games they should have won, blow leads, the offense would score 0 runs or 1 run, and people would be saying, oh, that's it. You can put them in a coffin. They're done here as far as the 2025 Reds go. It kind of feels like that, right? Only have, 12 or so games left in the season. They're 3 games back. There are now other teams in the mix. It's not just them in the Mets. So they certainly have a mountain to climb, but I'm not fully ready to eliminate them. Maybe if they lose today, by the way, an earlier first pitch for the Reds today. It's a day game, 1:15 at Busch Stadium. We'll still have you covered with a pregame show and a postgame show starting in the 9th inning live after the game, so make sure you check that out if you're not familiar with our Reds content here at Chatterbox Sports. I'm a little bit hesitant to write them off completely to this point, but you lose today, perhaps I changed my tune there on that a little bit. So that's what's coming up here on today's show. Hope you stick around throughout the entirety of today's program here at the Stone Shield Show. But let's start with the Cincinnati Bengals. Let's start with Joe Burrow. Let's start with Andrew Luck. A lot of people nationally have been saying that Joe Burrow very well could be the next Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck, of course, was a number 1 overall pick out of Stanford, one of the best college football players we have seen, or certainly I have seen in my lifetime. He was a consensus number 1 overall pick, and he was that guy that was going to replace Peyton Manning. And he came into Indianapolis, and it was very evident from the beginning that Andrew Luck was a really, really good professional quarterback, and the sky really was the limit as far as the things he could do out there on the football field, right? He was tough, he was gritty, he was cerebral, right? Stanford guy, just a genius out there when it came to diagnosing defenses, processing, right? His speed was incredible. He was tough, as I mentioned, had a huge arm. Did Andrew Luck could make all the throws over the middle, to the sideline, the deep ball, the hitch, the corner, the post. He could absolutely do it all as far as throwing the football, and he also could run a little bit too. He could get outside of the pocket. By no means was a statue in the pocket, and was able to get outside. He would even often lower his shoulder, run over some linebackers. Big physical guy. Was an unbelievable quarterback and was an unbelievable guy, really, for young people to look up to. And it looked like he was going to, have a career as a really, really good quarterback. Not going to say one of the greatest of all time, but a really, really good quarterback. He had several significant injuries, and then it was kind of a shock. I believe it was either after his 6th season or right before his 6th season, but early in his career, as he was kind of entering his prime, he decided to retire, and that shocked a lot of people, and he walked away. Now, obviously, he's back at his alma mater, Stanford, as their general manager, so he's still, close with football here at this point, but he retired, and it wasn't a situation where he, took a year off and came back. I think some people maybe thought that was going to be the case, but he retired, he hung it up, he said, nope, I'm prioritizing my family, my happiness, my health, and I'm stepping away from the game that I have played throughout the entirety of my life up to that point. Really was a shame because he was such a good player, such a good guy, as I alluded to, and really had an opportunity to become one of the best quarterbacks in the league and perhaps be a Hall of Fame type of guy. I don't think that is out of the realm of possibilities. The talent was absolutely there for Andrew Luck. Now you have Joe Burrow, very similar in a lot of ways, right? Obviously, no two players are going to be identical, but number 1 overall pick, right? Had a good college career. Obviously, it was a little bit different. Luck played more, right? He kind of came into college as the guy. Joe Burrow had to fight for, a spot. He was fighting to be the backup at Ohio State, transferred to LSU. First season, not the greatest. Second season, arguably one of the greatest seasons any quarterback at the collegiate level has ever had. In 2019, the arm strength of Burrow doesn't, compare to what Andrew Luck could do necessarily. But at the same time, Joe Burrow can make all the throws, right? He can throw the deep ball. He can throw the corner. He can throw it to the sideline. He can throw it over the middle. He can make all the throws as well. Joe Burrow, sneaky athletic, of course. People say that. Actually, I got to stop saying that. People say sneaky athletic. No, Joe Burrow's athletic. He can, move around within the pocket, outside the pocket, extend, create plays with his legs. That very similar to Andrew Luck. He's not going to run you over like Andrew Luck would do, right? Andrew Luck kind of had that Josh Allen ability to really run guys over and lower his shoulder. Joe Burrow's not going to necessarily do that, but the toughness of Joe Burrow and the toughness of Andrew Luck, very similar, right? I think the narrative might be shifting incorrectly to Joe Burrow because he's, injury prone, as people say, that he isn't tough. That's not the case whatsoever. Joe Burrow's as tough as they come. He has consistently stood in the pocket, taken shots, and has popped back up to his feet. Unfortunately for him, he's just had several serious injuries, and that's certainly something that Andrew Luck has had to deal with throughout his career as well. Nobody's questioning the toughness of either one of those guys, but they got hurt consistently. And here are some of the numbers that have really raised some eyebrows as it relates to the comparisons between Joe Burrow and Andrew Luck. QB contact, how many times they have been contacted throughout their career. Luck was 828, Joe Burrow 634. So similar, but obviously Luck been hit a lot more. Contact percentage in terms of the plays in which they're contacted. Luck 21%, Joe Burrow 20%. About exactly the same there. Sacked. Andrew Luck 174, Joe Burrow 201. And remember, Joe Burrow was just entering his 6th season. 201 times getting sacked. Absolutely ridiculous number. And pressure percentage, Andrew Luck 28%, Joe Burrow 27%. So those numbers pretty much align with each other pretty evenly. Really the only one that doesn't there is the contact. He's been contacted more, but I think if Burrow would have played throughout the entirety of the season, that number and that metric too would have been probably very similar to one another as well. And my biggest takeaway from this is no, I don't think Joe Burrow is going to be the next Andrew Luck. I alluded to yesterday on the show that I am concerned about the mental a little bit of Joe Burrow. We'll touch on that in a second, but let's look at the positives here. Joe Burrow obviously has had very serious injuries throughout his career to this point. And after every single one of them, he has attacked it full on, head of steam, and has responded and has come back and has been really, really good. Now, the question you could ask is he going to always be able to do that? At some point, is he going to snap mentally and get frustrated or, get sad about, how he's his career has panned out as far as the injuries go and change? Maybe. That's really the concern. But I think Joe Burrow is wired different than most people in this world, basically everybody in this world probably, I would argue, and he's just different in between the ears up here in his mind, and he cares a lot about football, especially coming into the league. Now, I think some people might have their reservations on whether or not he cares as much as he used to. We'll see if that is true or not. But when Joe Burrow was drafted in that year at LSU, he was all football all the time. That is all he cared about, and that is all he thought about. And he kind of alluded to that during various interviews that he had throughout his rookie career and throughout his year at LSU. And then all of a sudden, he gets paid. He gets paid hundreds of millions of dollars and becomes this global iconic star, right? Even off the football field. So many people overseas remember him as the guy that was in the fashion show, wearing the backless suit or whatever that, is with Aloe and models for them or whatever the case may be. There's so many people that have eyeballs on Joe Burrow these days that know nothing about NFL football and the National Football League and American football as a whole, right? So you got to wonder if those things could possibly change somebody or not. That's what we're going to find out. My money is that it is not going to change him, and we're going to see him attack this, and we're going to see him do everything in his power to come back this season. That's what my gut says. Joe Burrow, of course, has not spoken publicly since that. And we'll see. I think we're going to really be able to gauge where he's at once the next time he addresses the media, whenever that is. I don't know when that's going to be, but that's going to have I think all of us as Bengals fans should have our eyeballs on that the next time it happens because you're really going to get a gauge of where things are at. I remember after the wrist injury, you're down and sad and angry and frustrated about the things that had happened to Joe Burrow, and then he addressed the media, and then, you could tell that he had the right mindset and that he was going to attack this the same way he had attacked all of his previous injuries, and you were like, all right, we're good. We'll move through it with Jake Browning, and we'll go from there. We'll see if that is the same sentiment that we get after Joe Burrow addresses the media publicly, whenever that comes in the future. We'll see. But I'm hoping that certainly is the case, and I'm betting on that being the case there as well. But also, you have to understand, money can change people, right? Look at Conor McGregor, right? One of the biggest stars in the history of sports, certainly the biggest star in the UFC. And he was on the rise, right? He was knocking people out. He was, at first, you remember he had that big fight of the night, and he was all worked up about $60,000 that he won from that knockout performance. And then as he progressed in his career, he was making millions and millions of dollars each fight, made like $100 million for fighting Floyd Mayweather, made like $500 million or something absurd selling his whiskey company, Proper Number 12. So, and now what? We haven't seen him. Right? We haven't seen Conor McGregor out there in the octagon. He keeps acting like he's going to come back. We'll see. He says he's interested in the White House card, right? But at the end of the day, all the money and living like a king can change you and make you not want to go into an octagon in your underwear and fight basically to the death if there wasn't a referee in there. That's just money changes you. You don't have that same kind of mentality. Football, obviously very, very physical, not nearly on the level as mixed martial arts. But the only thing, if you're worried about him becoming the next Andrew Luck, you're sitting there going, well, I mean, he's won a lot of games. Lots of people view him as a really, really good quarterback, right? He's been hurt a bunch of times. He's made millions of dollars. He's famous. I don't think that necessarily drives him whatsoever, but the money, I'm sure, certainly does there as well. Could he perhaps be a little bit different than he was as a rookie when he, blew out his knee and really wanted to get back because he had so much to prove? Well, he's proven a lot, and he has yet another injury. So that would be the kind of the pessimistic side of things when it relates to Joe Burrow coming back. But again, My money is on him responding the way he always has to this point. And you just hope Cincinnati can hang in there without him, right? Obviously, if they're eliminated or if they're in a situation where lots of things need to go their way in order for Joe Burrow to come back or to make the playoffs, if a lot of things need to go well the last couple of weeks. If Joe Burrow were to come back, maybe he doesn't come back, right? But if they're in a spot where they're right in the thick of the playoff race and he's able to rehab that toe and put himself in a spot, I think you're going to see him come back, and I think you're going to see him come back with a vengeance as the Cincinnati Bengals quarterback. So the comparisons between him and Andrew Luck, I get it. The similarities are striking, but at the end of the day, I'm going to bet on Joe Burrow responding to this the best way he can. Yeah, he's going to be frustrated. Yeah, he's going to be ticked off, but he'll be back out there on the football field, and he's going to look very much like Joe Burrow that we are used to seeing there as well. And I think he's going to continue playing, especially, if they win that game in 21, right, against the Rams, maybe he is ready to hang it up, right? But I just think the pursuit of a Super Bowl, he knows he's a Super Bowl caliber quarterback. He knows this team, this city is starving for it, and he knows that he is the guy that is going, if anybody is going to bring a world championship to this city, it is going to be him, and I think that's got to motivate him and really drive him. Again, there's going to be frustrating moments, lonely moments, dark moments for him, but I think at the end of the day, having not won that Super Bowl championship yet, he is going to keep coming back and keep going, even if he continues to get injured, and just give it everything he has until ultimately the wheels fall off. And obviously, hopefully that is something that doesn't happen, but I would be shocked if Joe Burrow hung it up anywhere in the near future. We'll see. We'll revisit if he has another serious injury, but I think he's going to rehab it the way he always has. I think he's going to come back stronger the way he always has, and ultimately I think at some point he will get Cincinnati to the promised land and bring a Lombardi trophy here to the Queen City. All right, so that's our Joe Burrow conversation of the day. That video will be out later on YouTube if you missed it live. So lots of people nationally kind of breaking down the comparisons between Andrew Luck and Joe Burrow, and certainly I wanted to do that on my show as well. Now it is time for our NFL Power Rankings here at the show. And we're going to do these every single week. It's going to be a segment for us. We did it Tuesday last week. We're doing it Wednesday this week. I wouldn't be surprised if Wednesday kind of is what we end up doing here going forward. But we are going to test out this graphic that Casey McAllister made for us. We've been using it on Off the Bench. Again, obviously on my show, I'm solo producing this puppy, so we'll see how this goes. But without further ado, let's get it going here with our NFL Power Rankings going into Week 3. All right, so we're going to start in reverse order from 10 to 1 here on today's show. And at that number 10 spot, I have the Washington Commanders making this list. Now, the Commanders are an interesting team. I went back and forth on several teams that could perhaps fit in here at this number 10 overall spot, and ended up going with the Washington Commanders. The Commanders, of course, were the darlings of the league last year. Jaden Daniels, one of the best rookie seasons we have ever seen in the National Football League. But right now he's completing less than 60% of his passes, and he's got that knee injury. We'll see if he even is able to play this week for the Washington Commanders. They have a 1-1 record. They kind of ran into a buzzsaw on Thursday Night Football last week against the Green Bay Packers. The Packers, of course, are a really, really good team, but the passing game looks completely out of sync right now for the Washington Commanders. Terry McLaurin obviously held out, and he wasn't able to get up to speed here until relatively recently, and it's showing as far as Cliff Kingsbury and that Commanders offense goes. I think they'll get it figured out, but, Daniels to McLaurin last year, it was borderline unstoppable. That certainly isn't the situation right now in Washington, and, they're in a spot offensively where they have a lot of kinks that they need to work out, but I think they've got a ton of talent on that team. I think they've got a ton of weaponry on their defense there as well. Marshawn Lattimore, certainly a cause for concern. But they got a good head coach in Dan Quinn and a good quarterback in Jaden Daniels that is beat up, but just enough to get into this top 10 here. I think if they play lots of other teams in the National Football League, they have a 2-0 record, but they kind of ran into a buzzsaw there with Green Bay. I still view Washington as a playoff team. Are they going to win that division? No. Philadelphia probably going to win that division, but I think at this point I still consider the Commanders a playoff team. All right, at number 9, I've got the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers, of course, are without their starting quarterback right now in Brock Purdy, but Mac Jones looked the part, certainly, in their previous game against New Orleans. I get it. It's the Saints. You could argue the Saints are the worst team in the National Football League. Fair. I've always been a big Mac Jones believer, to be completely honest with you. I thought if the 49ers would have drafted him right away at that 3 overall selection a couple of years back where they decided to take Trey Lance, maybe the 49ers have a world championship by now. That's kind of my hot take when it comes to the NFL. The 2020 season that Mac Jones had with Steve Sarkisian, Nick Saban at Alabama, I think is even more impressive, honestly, than what Joe Burrow was able to do the previous season in 2019. Mac Jones can play football. Now, is he a bit of a statue in the pocket? Yes. Does he have limitations? Yes. Does he need great skill guys around him? Yes. But the 49ers check off a lot of those boxes. Their offensive line is a problem in San Francisco, and I was worried that Mac Jones was probably going to get lit up a little bit too much in that football game, but he did a great job of getting the ball out of his hands quickly, and he is a guy that can be that pea shooter for Kyle Shanahan, where he can just go out there and run his offense, right? Some coaches in the NFL, they like adapting to what they have offensively, and I think there's elements that you have to do across all levels of football with that, but Shanahan, he does a good job of that, but also he has a very clear picture of what he wants his offense to look like, regardless who is playing quarterback. And Mac Jones can execute Kyle Shanahan's offense. So if Brock Purdy continues to miss some time, I think the Niners are going to continue to be successful. McCaffrey, obviously, still an unbelievable player. And they're 2-0, right? It hasn't been the prettiest, but they've gone on the road for 2 games. They were able to take down the Seattle Seahawks, a really good defense in Week 1 with Brock Purdy, and they respond on the road against New Orleans at that number 2 overall, or at that Week 2 spot against the Saints. And look, I think the 49ers are going to continue to have some success, even if they have to ride with Mac Jones, and pretty clearly to me a top 10 team going into Week 3. Making their debut in my power rankings this week is the Detroit Lions. I think obviously they have a lot of turnover, new coordinators. That certainly is something that they're going to have to work through. Their offensive line is completely different as well. They've got new pieces across their offensive line. That is going to be a work in progress for them, but they hung 50-plus points on the Chicago Bears. Yeah, the Bears are not a prolific offense, or defense rather, in the National Football League, but anytime you hang 50-plus, in an NFL game, that is impressive. I do not care who you are playing, and the Lions were able to do that again, obviously without Ben Johnson anymore as their offensive coordinator. If that offensive line can be serviceable and protect Jared Goff, they're going to be a playoff team, right? Don't view them as a team that's going to win the North, but I view them as a playoff team even after losing their coordinators, all the makeshift pieces along their offensive line coming into this year. But if you give Jared Goff time, he can produce and play quarterback at a high level in this league. They debut in the top 10 after a big-time win against the Chicago Bears. Coming in at number 7, I've been really bullish on this team. I was in the offseason, and that is not going to change after an impressive Monday Night Football victory on the road against the Houston Texans. Really big believer in what they're doing in Tampa Bay. I view them as the team that's definitely going to win that division in the NFC South. I view them as a team that can compete for a conference championship. Look at them as kind of a sneaky NFC championship type of team. I think they got a lot of good pieces. They got a really good quarterback in Baker Mayfield, and as we talked about yesterday, he has found his home here in Tampa Bay. It's a laid-back city, a low-key city. Football not necessarily the most important thing. The media there is a little bit more easygoing in Tampa Bay, not like everybody running around with a chip on their shoulder like Cleveland and all the negativity that surrounds the Cleveland Browns. He can just kind of come in there, fly under the radar with great weaponry around him offensively, and be who he is, and that is what you're seeing Baker Mayfield do in Tampa Bay. Really impressive start to this season. They are a definite top 10 team here in the National Football League, and I wouldn't be surprised if they continue to climb from this number 7 spot on my list. Back-to-back Los Angeles teams here coming up, similar to what we had last week. I've got the Los Angeles Chargers here at this number 6 overall spot. I've been really impressed with Jim Harbaugh and what he has been able to do. 20 games ago, this Chargers defense was a total mess, one of the worst in the National Football League, even with a defensive head coach. Right? Remember the Brandon Staley era, how bad they were defensively during his time as the head coach there, all the mistakes in which they made. Jim Harbaugh, this is what he does. He comes in and he makes changes immediately, and he wins immediately. You saw him win last year, get into the playoffs in year number 1, and they've taken a huge step from year 1 to year 2 with Harbaugh at the helm. Justin Herbert, he looks healthy, he looks fast, he looks lean. clean. He looks quick. The arm's still very much alive for Justin Herbert there. He looks really, really good. The offensive line, Joe Alt hit that draft pick out of the park. Obviously, they were without Rashawn Slater, who's a big-time offensive tackle in this league. He got hurt prior to the season, so we'll see if they can hold things down offensively. Mekhi Becton, of course, sliding into duty there, kind of bouncing around their offensive line, but Alt has been terrific. They have skill guys that they can get the ball to. I know a lot of people knock the skill guys that the Chargers have, but Ladd McConkey, yeah, he's undersized, but he is a catch machine. He can do all the routes over the middle. He's got great hands. He's got great short area quickness for the Los Angeles Chargers. Quentin Johnston, who looked like he was going to be a bust for quite some time, he finally is coming into his own here with Greg Roman calling the plays, offering them some explosive threats down the field, taking deep shots to Quentin Johnston. And the ageless wonder, Keenan Allen, I believe he's like 33 years of age here at this point, but he is just a go-to security blanket type of guy for Justin Herbert on third down. They're going to have to be able to run the football a little bit better with Amarian Hampton and Najee Harris. That's something obviously hardball teams always love to do, but really impressed with where the Chargers are at, knocking off obviously Kansas City in Brazil and beating up a lesser opponent certainly in Las Vegas on Monday Night Football, but hard not to be impressed with the Chargers. And I view them as a potential team that could win this conference and ultimately compete for a Super Bowl. Yeah, the next big step for them is competing with teams like Baltimore and Buffalo and even, Kansas City to some degree, but obviously they took care of business in week one. The Chargers are a really good football team and a threat in the AFC. We'll stick with the Los Angeles theme here. Los Angeles football right now is the best it has ever been throughout my life. Here to this point, the Rams are an incredible football team. I, viewed them as a team that was going to come in and compete for a Super Bowl, and then you had the questions in the offseason with Matthew Stafford and his back injury. He appears to be fine. Obviously that could rear its ugly head at any point during the season. He's a veteran guy. He's been hit a ton throughout his career, but he looks solid through 2 games here to this point. Really impressed with Sean McVay, right? His teams are always so physical, and they're always so disciplined. Last year, in 2024, the Rams were the youngest defense in the National Football League, and they still were the least penalized defense. That's just a characteristic of a Sean McVay team. He does a tremendous job as their head coach. That defense, they can rush the passer, they can cover, they can hit, they can stop the run. Weaponry on offense. Obviously, Cooper Kupp is gone. He is in Seattle, but Davante Adams is kind of flying under the radar here. He showed what he could do in last week's game against the Tennessee Titans. 6 catches, over 100 yards, and a touchdown. Mind you, a couple of years ago, Davante Adams was pretty much clearly the number 1 wide receiver in the National Football League, and not many people debated that. Obviously, he's gotten a little bit older. He's bounced around a little bit. The Raiders, that was a disaster. They tried things in New York. Now he lands here in Los Angeles. But Adams can still play. You saw that last weekend against Tennessee, and that receiving core with Nakua and Adams, that is a problem. The Rams are a really, really good football team. I have them at number 5 here on this list. Coming in at number 4, the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens are going to be just fine. We said that even after their collapse in week 1. Lamar Jackson has been sensational. 7 touchdowns, no picks for Lamar Jackson here to this point. With Joe Burrow's injury, you can pencil in the Baltimore Ravens as the winners in the AFC North. That's just kind of the reality of the situation. And Lamar Jackson well on his way here to perhaps securing a 3rd MVP. There are those in Baltimore that believed he should have won it last year. I did not. I think Joe Burrow was the most valuable player in the league last year. But my pick, I guess, for the MVP was Josh Allen. And obviously he won that award, and I think rightfully so. But Lamar Jackson has been sensational through a couple of weeks, and I would look at him as a guy that could perhaps win the MVP for Baltimore. The way this organization is going to be evaluated is their postseason success. They're going to win a ton of games. They're going to win the division, but what do they do once they get to the playoffs? Can they get to the Super Bowl? That is the question with Baltimore. Questions defensively and blowing some leads, but still good enough to be a top 5 team here this week for me after a big win against the Cleveland Browns. Coming in at number 3 is the Buffalo Bills. Buffalo Bills, I was really impressed with how they won the game. It's the New York Jets, right? It's a team that probably is going to be picking at the top of the NFL draft this coming year, right? They're not going to win a ton of football games. They have a new coach. It's just the Jets, right? But how they won that football game to me was impressive. James Cook, 132 yards on the ground and 2 scores, and Josh Allen didn't have a touchdown in that game. And if you can win like that and take some of the weight off of Josh Allen's shoulders, that is something that is going to help you out a lot, because the knock on the Buffalo Bills has always been this. They're too Josh Allen reliant. They always need him to put on the cape and be Superman, even if they aren't playing a high-caliber opponent. Well, you didn't see that in the New York Jets game. They really played a complete football game defensively. They took steps in the right direction. Again, they weren't going against Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Raven offense, but Buffalo's a really good team. I think they're well coached. McDermott does a nice job. They've got a great quarterback in Josh Allen, and they, of course, are 2-0, and that is good enough to be number 3 in the NFL for me at this point in my power rankings. All right, we do have a change at the top, as I alluded to. Coming into this week, I said Philadelphia probably was going to be safe at that spot unless somebody else did something spectacular. That somebody else did something spectacular. We'll talk about them in a minute. Philadelphia's still a really great team, right? They're going to probably be a team that wins that division, no problem, and you're going to be worried about them in the postseason and very well have a good chance of repeating as Super Bowl champions. But they haven't really thrown the ball much to this point. They haven't needed to, right? They've won 2 games. They're very much a run-first type of team. They don't necessarily scare you with what they can do offensively, but they kind of just squeeze you to death, suffocate you, kind of like a boa constrictor. Dominate time of possession, run the ball with Saquon Barkley. They're built around their offensive line and just toughness and Sirianni. It's Philadelphia, right? And Hurts hasn't made any mistakes here to this point. At some point, he's going to be asked to do more, and he's going to have to do a little bit more than he has done to this point, but he is doing enough to win football games for them here at this point. And Philadelphia going to be a tremendous team, but I've been a little bit more impressed with the team that sits at number 1 here in my power rankings, and that is the Green Bay Packers. An incredible performance on a short week for Green Bay. I viewed them as a team that was going to compete for a Super Bowl when I actually had them in the Super Bowl prior to the Micah Parsons trade, and then you add one of the best young pass rushers in football in Micah Parsons, and that kind of is just the icing on the cake for you when you're talking about Green Bay, right? They don't really have a clear wide receiver 1. I always viewed Jaden Reed as that guy that they would go to in critical situations. He broke his collarbone. He's going to be out for a while, and that's really the only concern that you have with Green Bay, is they're already pretty banged up through a couple of weeks. But they draft well, they develop well, they have Dobbs, right, that tight end. Tucker Kraft, he is out to an incredible start this year for Green Bay. They've got a really good quarterback in Jordan Love, a really exceptional head coach in Matt LaFleur, and one of the best defensive coordinators in the National Football League, despite it only being his second year in that role. And Jeff Hafley at that spot for Green Bay, and really impressed with what they've been able to do, and I think they're the most complete team right now. Again, they're a little bit banged up, but they can play well on offense, they can play well on defense. They're a well-run organization. They've got a great head coach, and pretty clearly to me, they're the number 1 team this week going into week 3 in my power rankings. There you have it, 1 through 10, our second edition of the Power Rankings here to this point in the NFL season. And I got to use that graphic there for the first time. Shout out Casey McAllister for that. That certainly is very, very exciting. But those are my 10 teams. Are there teams that can still win the Super Bowl that aren't in the top 10? Sure. Obviously I did not have Cincinnati in the top 10. Without Joe Burrow, they just frankly do not belong in the top 10. And also, you could argue, and I probably would agree with this sentiment as well, that they have been gifted both of these games and very well could be 0-2. But last year, they had games that they could have, should have won and did not. This year, kind of the other way around. Could have, should have lost, and they're winning. So maybe they'll be able to continue that positive momentum here going forward. But certainly, the biggest test for them of the year so far will be on Sunday on the road against the Minnesota Vikings. So they're a team that, very well could have put in there. And also the Indianapolis Colts are another team, right? I think we got to start having that conversation about Daniel Jones being all right. Like, he's been solid, right? They just beat a really good Denver team. A lot of people picked Denver to win their division. They took care of business there at home. New scenery for Daniel Jones, right? He always was, fine upstairs in between the ears. He's got talent. He's got great arm talent. He's got great legs, great athleticism inside and outside of the pocket. And, at the end of the day, he's still Daniel Jones, but he's got a really good offensive mind, calling the shots. Shane Steichen, Lou Anarumo, of course, former Bengals defensive coordinator, calling the shots for them defensively. And keep an eye on Indianapolis, man. They've got some good pieces. It's always been a solid defense. I think really the biggest question was Daniel Jones going to look like typical Daniel Jones, or is he going to look like a competent NFL quarterback? He's played really well these first couple of weeks for Indianapolis. If that continues, they definitely will find their way into my power rankings. Said we're going to do multiple lists here on today's show, and that's exactly what we're going to do as we transition this conversation into college football. I'm a big college football guy, and we're going to spend a lot of time here on my show talking about college football. But Joel Klatt, he does a terrific job. Big Noon, right? He's a Fox football, college football analyst. He does draft stuff for NFL Network there as well. Herb Street, my favorite, but like Joel Klatt, he knows what he's doing. He really is incredible. His podcast is also unbelievable as well. And earlier this morning on his show, he evaluated the 10 highest performing quarterbacks in college football through a couple of weeks. He had his top 10 going into the season, and he obviously made a lot of adjustments off that. And we're going to be breaking down his top 10 here on today's show. At number 10, he has Julian Sayin of Ohio State. And, lots of people, the narrative around Ohio State coming into this 2025 season was, you have two new coordinators that you have to replace with Jim Knowles leaving and, of course, Chip Kelly leaving as well. That was a big storyline. Your defense, all those starters, that loaded defense last year that won a national championship for Ohio State, lots of turnover there. I think there was a lot of belief nationally that they would be just fine and kind of just reload there defensively. But the big question nationally was the quarterback position. And I was saying that wasn't going to be an issue whatsoever. Julian Sayin can flat out play. He was a big-time high school football player in California. He was an Alabama commit, as we've touched on. If Nick Saban hadn't retired, he would be the starting quarterback at Alabama right now. But I really had no doubts in terms of whether or not he could play. Offensive line play at Ohio State has always been terrific. I can't remember the last time I saw like an Ohio State quarterback getting lit up, right? Ohio State quarterbacks always have all day to throw, go through their progression with elite wide receivers all around. I think Julian Sayin has the ability to lift a mediocre team, and he certainly is not on a mediocre team. He's on a really, really good football team, the number one team in the country, and he's a really good football player. He needed to be on this list for Joel Klatt. I would have him higher up on this list because Julian Sayin is the real deal. Jaden Mayava of USC is at number 9 for Joel Klatt. This is kind of interesting for me. Nobody talking about Lincoln Riley and the Trojans coming into this year. Nobody. Absolutely nobody was discussing them. And rightfully so, right? They have certainly underperformed since Lincoln Riley got there. They had Caleb Williams, who won the Heisman Trophy, not able to get in the college football playoffs. So lots of games they should have won that they weren't able to do so. They haven't played anybody really on their schedule. They just beat Purdue. Okay, I get it. It's a conference opponent, but at the end of the day, Purdue, lots of turmoil there. New coach. They're still very much bottom feeders in the Big Ten at this point. But Mayava's been impressive through the first couple of games. I wouldn't have him on my list personally at this point because I need to see it against a higher caliber opponent, and we haven't really seen that yet. But Mayava lighting up the stat sheet, lots of completions. And, of course, he has a prolific head coach in Lincoln Riley who has done great things as a play caller. Definitely had his time at Oklahoma, right? The Heisman Trophy guys that he had, Baker, Kyler, Jalen Hurts was, a guy that had a Heisman type of season despite not winning the award, and of course Caleb Williams at USC there as well. Mayava, could he be the next great Lincoln Riley quarterback? Maybe. He's done a great job to this point, but I need to see it against higher caliber of opponents. At number 8, Joey Aguilar of Tennessee. He checks in at the number 8 spot on Klatt's list. Aguilar, his story is unbelievable, right? He was playing low-end football, right? And then he gets an opportunity there after COVID to go play for Appalachian State, does a nice job there, and he's going to go play at UCLA. And then you have kind of the controversy of the offseason as it relates to college football with Nico Iamaleava, former Tennessee quarterback. Aguilar was at UCLA, and basically the two teams swapped quarterbacks and traded. And I think a lot of people thought that Iamaleava was going to be the better player. UCLA is a disaster, right? Their coach has already been fired. They haven't won a game. And Joey Aguilar looks like the real deal. The beginning, particularly of the Georgia game, unbelievable. It's a guy that's old. He's played a ton of football, has that experience, but coming into that kind of environment at home with all that pressure against Kirby Smart, kind of the kings of the SEC there with the Georgia Bulldogs, and he played really well, particularly in the first half. Had that offense and that team out to a 21-7 lead. He fell off a little bit, missed a couple of throws later in the game where they really could have taken charge of the football game and put Georgia out of it. Don't want to knock him. He still played a really, really good football game. He certainly belongs on this list. Joey Aguilar at number 8. A loss for Tennessee, but they're very much a playoff type of team. Obviously, in the SEC, it's going to be a difficult schedule. They got a ways to go, but Aguilar is certainly a really good football player and belongs on this list. At 7 for Joel Klatt is Rocco Becht. Rocco Becht is the quarterback of the Iowa State Cyclones. He's played a lot of football. I really love Rocco Becht. In that game against Iowa, he was terrific at the end. Becht is one of those guys that, might not be having his best game, or the offense might not be scoring a ton of points necessarily, but late in the game, everybody on that team for Iowa State and Matt Campbell trusts Rocco Becht, and that comes through the TV screen as well. It's very evident how much they trust him and how much they believe in him, particularly late in football games, and he rose to the occasion, and he delivered for his football team in that game against Iowa. He's played a lot of football. Look for Iowa State to be a team to be reckoned with in the Big 12, and Rocco Becht certainly belongs on this list. He has done a tremendous job. At number 6, Tommy Castellanos. I would not have Castellanos this high on the list. He had an incredible game. Florida State's only played 2 games, right? Their second game was against a nobody. So really his evaluation process is what he did against Alabama. And it was sensational what he was able to do with his legs, the short area quickness. Not the fastest guy, but was very quick. And Alabama had all types of trouble tackling him, and he made some really good throws in that football game. Uber competitive type of guy. Talked all the nonsense that he talked in the offseason at the SEC media days and the week leading up to the game. He was talking, and he went out there and delivered with Gus Malzahn calling the shots for them offensively for Florida State. I need to see it more with Castellanos. I don't know if that's a performance against Alabama that can be replicated throughout the entirety of a season. He took massive shots in that game as well. That was kind of the game plan. He needed to put his body on the line for Florida State to win that football game. Credit to him. They were able to do it, and he was able to get it done. But Castellanos, I need to see it a few more times before I'm ready to put him at the top or at the 6th spot. I probably wouldn't have him in the on this list to begin with here at this point. At number 5, Haynes King of Georgia Tech. He checks in at the number 5 spot. Haynes King is a flat-out dog. No two ways around it. If you remember the last year with Georgia Tech where they went into Athens, a place, by the way, if nobody goes in and wins. We'll see if Alabama can do that in a couple of weeks. But he took that game to multiple overtimes, won the games of the year last year, and was literally a play away from winning that game. He is as tough as they come. His team has complete belief in him, and he ran the rock really well with a banged-up leg. He played the opener against Colorado, won that game with a run late against the Buffaloes. Was unable to play in week 2 with the injury, comes back for the Clemson game at home and was sensational. Ran it 25 times, made the throws. And the thing about Haynes King as well is they don't ask him to throw the ball a ton, but he did have to throw it against Clemson as the season progresses. I don't know if he's necessarily going to throw it all that much, but his floor is so high when you're talking about Haynes King, right? He's a guy that isn't going to give you silly turnovers. Guys that were on this list before the season that are no longer on this list in large part due to making silly mistakes. DJ Lagway has all the talent in the world, but he loves throwing the football to the other team. He's not on this list, and Florida has looked horrible to this point in the season. But Haynes King, he's not going to make stupid mistakes. He's not going to turn the football over. He can keep everybody organized offensively. He's a leader. He's tough. He's a dog. He'll put his body on the line. He kind of went viral for his pregame interview as he was talking with the College Game Day guys on Saturday. It was a noon game, Clemson, Georgia Tech. He was warming up, had the earpiece in as he was talking to him, and he was going through his full warm-up, throwing to all of his teammates, and it really was a great interview. But Haynes King's a dog. He has experience, and he absolutely belongs in the top 5. Look out for Georgia Tech. Maybe don't have the skill guys necessary to really compete for a national title, but Georgia Tech's a really good football team. Brent Key's a really good head coach, and Haynes King is a flat-out dog. Speaking of dogs, at number 4, Joel has Gunnar Stockton at that spot, and I would have Stockton lower on this list. He deserves a lot of credit, right, because out of anybody in college football, I would say that Georgia win is the biggest win that anyone's had to this point. Could you say Ohio State is the biggest win over Texas because they're the number one team? Yeah, but it was at home, and clearly Texas isn't as good as many people thought going in. But going on the road to Neyland Stadium, one of the best environments in college football, especially when it is checkered out the way in which it was, and especially when you're a young quarterback and you find yourself as a football team down 21-7 like Gunnar Stockton in Georgia did. He remained calm. He made big-time throws. The throw on fourth down that kept them in the game, one of the best throws we've seen. Definitely the throw of the year for college football. He deserves a lot of credit for that. He made some really big-time throws as they were coming back in that game, as Georgia kind of was just hanging around. Next you know, it's a tie ball game, and you have Tennessee and that whole stadium on their heels. I was impressed with Stockton, but 4 on this list seems a little bit too rich for me. Need to see it a few more times. Need to see some more consistency from him as well, and some more spatial awareness in the pocket. He was sitting back there holding the football, and then they come through and knock it out of his hands. Like, you just have to understand, if you're kind of standing still there in the pocket there for that long against an SEC defense, you're probably in a spot where you need to move or you need to get rid of the football. Gunnar Stockton really impressed with him in the Tennessee game, and that's a huge win for him and his confidence, and I would expect him to only get better as the season goes on. But sitting there at that 4 spot, it's a little bit rich for me. Dante Moore, a guy nobody's talking about, Oregon quarterback. Oregon very much a perennial national title threat here at this point. They check boxes in the trenches, right? That's what you need. If you look at blueprints of teams in recent years that have won national titles, you got to be good in the trenches and you got to have a good defense. Ohio State, check. Michigan the year before, check. Georgia the years 2 prior to that, check. That's just what you need. Oregon's got it. Dan Lanning's got it, and he's also got a really, really good quarterback. He was the starter as a true freshman at UCLA. UCLA as a football program, kind of a bit of a dumpster fire, but he was starting for Chip Kelly as a freshman, decides to transfer to Oregon and back up Dylan Gabriel for a season, and now he's back into a starting role here with Oregon this year. He's got lots of talent. He's a guy that I think a lot of people think have the ability to play good football on Sundays going forward, and that offense is a lot further along than it was last year with Dylan Gabriel, because Gabriel was a transfer. He comes in, he's got to learn it all and go right away. Well, Dante Moore was the backup last year. He was learning all that stuff, and he's really taking the next step. We'll see as they get into more difficult opponents. Bit of a slow start for him on the road against Northwestern this past Saturday, but he's a really good athlete, and he can make all the throws. Dante Moore certainly belongs in the top 3 here. And at the number 2 spot, I don't like him. A lot of people don't like him. But Carson Beck has been phenomenal for Miami to this point in the season. He absolutely belongs on this list. Joel Klatt's got him at number 2, and frankly, that's probably where I would have him as well. There was questions with Carson Beck coming into the year with the elbow, right? How are you going to respond after, he hurt it late in the year in the SEC title game, and he's starting in week 1 against a really good team in Notre Dame. How's that going to look, right? Moving the football, throwing the football, making all the throws. Well, he's checking all the boxes. He's got a good offensive line at Miami, and he's got skill guys too. I always thought he got a little bit too much criticism for how things went offensively for Georgia last year. He had receivers dropping the ball all over the place. He's got skill guys in South Beach and Miami catching the football for him, and he's played really, really good. Obviously, he needs to continue to do it. Obviously, the off-the-field immaturity stuff, that is very much there, but just evaluating quarterback performance, he's been really good for Miami through a couple of games this year and belongs at number 2. And who belongs at number 1 is definitely John Mateer of Oklahoma. No two ways about it. He was the darling of the transfer portal, coming in from Washington State. Arbuckle, the OC from Wazoo, comes in with him as the OC now for Oklahoma, and you've got to be really impressed with what he can do. Just Baker Mayfield vibes in Norman, Oklahoma right now. He can throw it. He's got a really good arm. He can run as well. He's a good athlete, and also just the mojo that he has. And clearly, even as a transfer, the entire team understands that it is his team, and they believe in him. And he was really good in the Michigan game against a really good Michigan defense. And Mateer certainly has to continue to string it together, but right now, he's got to be the favorite to win the Heisman Trophy, I would say. Oklahoma's got to continue to win football games in order for that to happen, but John Mateer really in a good spot to kind of cement himself as the best quarterback in college football, and I think right now he has to be looked at as that guy. As far as guys that aren't on this list, again, it's based on how quarterbacks have performed through 3 weeks. For instance, Garrett Nussmeier, to me, LSU's undefeated. I thought going into the year he was the most pro-ready guy to go out there and play on Sundays, but he hasn't really been great. In fact, the LSU offense has really struggled so far this season. And, as far as performing guys go, I guess you can't put him in the top 10, but as far as you need to drive late in the game, who do you want? Nussmeier to me is still at the top of that list. Guys that have fallen off a cliff, Cade Klubnik of Clemson, he was viewed as one of the Heisman Trophy favorites. Clemson was a national title contender, and he was going to be perhaps the number 1 overall pick for Clemson. And offensively, it has been bad for them. And it kind of was a slow start for Klubnik since he became the starter at Clemson. High-profile guy, 5-star guy. I think a lot of people thought he'd come in and have tremendous success at Clemson. It took him a little bit. And then it finally started getting going late last year. Clemson went on a run. They made the college football playoff. And then he, by the way, played really, really good against Texas in the playoff game. And I think that's why a lot of people were like, yep, this is going to continue into next season. And it just has not. They get a bit of a pass for how they performed against LSU. It's a good team, week 1, whatever. But then you go to Georgia Tech, and you lose that football game there as well. Again, we spent some time giving Haynes King a lot of credit and Brent Key a lot of credit and that team a lot of credit, but at the end of the day, you're Clemson, and you've got NFL guys supposedly all over your football team, and you lost that game. So lots to fix in Clemson. Can Klubnik get back to that spot? We'll see, but he certainly doesn't belong on this list now, and he was probably the number 1 guy on this list going forward, or at the beginning of the year. One guy that Klatt left out that I think should be on this list is Josh Hoover of TCU. He's now there with Sonny Dykes. He's a junior. He's been around a little bit. He's a really good player. And how he played against Belichick in Belichick's first game at North Carolina was really, really impressive. Nobody talking about TCU in the Big 12 as a potential team that is a force to be reckoned with. I think Josh Hoover and TCU are really, really good. I would have him on this list. Devin Dampier, perhaps a guy that could find his way on this list after this week. The Utah quarterback, kind of a similar situation to the Oklahoma situation, right? Transfer quarterback, they bring the OC Arbuckle with them. Same situation here for Utah. They've had issues at quarterback since the injuries to Cam Rising over the past couple of years. They go to the portal, they get a transfer portal guy from New Mexico, and they bring his OC in. Utah, Texas Tech this weekend, going to be a tremendous game. I think Devin Dampier is going to really have a good game and will probably play his way onto this list, as I believe Utah is the team to beat in the Big 12, and certainly a dark horse national title type of team that nobody's talking about. Definitely a college football playoff type team, in my opinion. Also, like, Drew Allar's not on this list, right? People are looking at him as always going to be the number 1 overall pick. Yeah, Penn State's undefeated. Haven't really, had a difficult opponent yet. He's not on this list. It's been shaky for him. Obviously, Arch Manning not on this list anymore. DJ Lagway, who's we already touched on. Guys that going into the year you thought they were going to play a certain type of way, but it kind of have fallen off. Still time to get back in the right direction. I still think Arch Manning will be fine, but, these past couple of weeks, against teams that aren't good at all, he's been bad. And, if he plays like that when the SEC schedule starts, they're in trouble. Luckily for Texas, they have one more layup before they really get into the thick of things. But, Arch Manning is a guy that a lot of us like. I really like. I still believe in, but definitely does not belong on this list. And another guy, Sawyer Robertson. If he has another good game for Baylor, he could work his way onto this list there as well. But overall, I thought it was solid from Klatt. Again, to recap, Mateer and Beck are 1 and 2. That's just kind of where things are at. Probably put Dante Moore at 3. I'd bring Stockton down a little bit from that 4 spot. Castellanos, he has at 6. I wouldn't have him on this list. He has Sayin at 10. I would have Sayin more in the 6-7 range at this point. Aguilar certainly belongs on the list. Rocco Beck, and I would have Jaden Mayaba off the list and put Josh Hoover into the list. But again, people talk about lists all the time and what have you, and I think sometimes it gets blown out of proportion. But I thought today was a good day to kind of spend some time talking about college football and breaking that down. All right, got 5 minutes left here on this show. Planned on talking about the Kansas City Chiefs and the Cincinnati Reds. And let's see. We're probably going to let's just touch on both real quickly here. The Chiefs, they're 0-2, but it's not like they've played the Raiders and the Panthers, right? They've played good football teams. Brazil, that's always tough to travel internationally and play a really good team. Harbaugh, good defense. And they got edged out in that game. And then, they respond by playing the defending Super Bowl champions. And they lose both those games by 1 possession. And I know a lot of people listening to this don't like the Kansas City Chiefs, and that's completely fine. But as long as they have Patrick Mahomes, they will be just fine. It's a get-right game this week. If they lose to New York on Sunday Night Football, despite the fact that it is on the road, then you can maybe press the panic button if you're Kansas City. But they're 6.5-point favorites on the road. I expect them to cover that spread and win that game pretty handedly, despite the fact that there are issues for them from a skill guy perspective. Worthy, we'll see if he can play. Rashee Rice has the suspension. He's going to be out for a few more weeks. Travis Kelce, obviously aging. He isn't the Travis Kelce from 3 to 4 years ago, but still a guy that they can go to. He had the big touchdown in Brazil against the Chargers that, really gave them a chance in that football game. Certainly a threat still in the red zone. But, they need more help around Patrick Mahomes. But at the end of the day, they still have Patrick Mahomes, and he's going to be just fine, especially with Andy Reid, right? Andy Reid is the best head coach in the National Football League still, all right? He's going to win you a few games by himself, right? Just his brilliance, late game, dialing it up. He's going to win you a few games. So Kansas City, maybe the Chargers go on this run where they win, 13, 14 games this year. I'm not going to necessarily sit here and predict that. And then Kansas City doesn't win the division, and they're a wild card team for the first time in however long, since Mahomes certainly has been the guy. Maybe that happens. So I do think they're going to take a step back. But at the end of the day, they're not going to lose the teams that they, shouldn't lose to, right? You could argue, though, they should have beat the Chargers, the first game. Chargers are a really good football team. Eagles, obviously, now you could say the past couple of times have had their number, despite the fact a few years ago Kansas City obviously won that Super Bowl game there as well. But I think the Chiefs are going to be fine. They're probably still going to win a playoff game this year, but somebody at the end of the day has to knock them off, right? Obviously 9-8 hasn't been enough to get into the postseason these past couple of years. I would imagine it's not going to be enough again this year. But even if Kansas City were to go 9-8 and somehow get in, ain't nobody want to play them. All right, ain't nobody want to play them there in the playoffs, and I would still bet that they would probably find a way to win that first playoff game if that were the case, even if they get in at 10-7, and people are like, oh, they're not the same Chiefs that win all these games. There's still going to be a problem in the postseason with Mahomes, Andy Reid, and Travis Kelce. If all those guys are healthy. Still have Spags defensively calling the shots as the DC, and he certainly does a tremendous job. One of the best, if not the best, defensive coordinators in the National Football League. Lastly, the Reds. Spent a lot of time talking about them on Off the Bench. Disappointing week or so. This team continually finds ways to frustrate you. Now they have slipped once again under 500. They have a 75-76 record coming into the game this afternoon against the St. Louis Cardinals. If you win, you have a chance to still really stay alive, but obviously the Mets are ahead of you. And now the Diamondbacks have leapfrogged you there as well, as they're only a game and a half back. The Diamondbacks, of course, a couple of years ago went on that run where, they won a ton of games at the end of the year, and then they ran through the playoffs and competed for a world championship. So I don't anticipate them, easing off the gas. You're a game and a half behind them. You're running out of time. I think it's 12 or so games left in the season, and, not lots of baseball ahead of you. And you got to play your division, right? Once you're done with St. Louis, you got 4 against the Cubs. You got to play the Pirates, who you haven't had as easy of a time this year as you should have against them, and then Milwaukee, who's just flat out owned you. And I think maybe it's a pessimistic viewpoint, but something tells me that they're going to have a chance, and by a chance, like not a great chance, but a chance going into that Milwaukee series, and I don't see them picking up a single game against the Milwaukee Brewers to end the season. That's just kind of where I'm at right now. Today, no doubt, a must-win for this Reds team, and frustrating, right? Because it was kind of there for the taking, and then you go to Sacramento this past weekend, and it's like, yeah, to win 2 games or sweep, and you are right stinking there. And instead you get swept by a team in the Athletics that isn't going to obviously make the postseason and has been one of the worst teams in baseball over the course of the last 5 to 10 years. So very disappointing to this point. We'll kind of on the show have a full recap of emotions once they're officially eliminated. I'm assuming that happens. But still for now, a little bit of life. And got to find a way to finish over 500. One game below 500 here at this point. Got to finish above 500. And yeah, but to me, I've said this before on this show. I've said it before on Off the Bench. It's a success if you make the postseason. It's a failure if you don't. And certainly looks like we're trending in the direction of a failure here at this point. Again, Pre-game show, like shortly, as in like really close to right now here at the channel, and then obviously a post-game show in the 9th inning and after the game on Chatterbox Reds there as well. But that will do it for this edition of the Stone Shield Show. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us throughout the entirety of the program. And also, if you ever have any suggestions on things you want me to talk about, let me know in the comments section, and we'll do the best to work those in. I'm very much open to talking about whatever. This is, we have a Cincinnati focus here, obviously, but I'm willing to talk about any sport other than soccer, and basically any national headline there is to talk about there as well. So if you ever have any ideas or things you want my opinion on, certainly get in the comments section, and we can do that. Back tomorrow on Off the Bench at 10 o'clock, and then my show after that at 11. Again, we'll have the podcast up. If you missed some of the show today, that's fine. We'll have the podcast up in about 15, 20 minutes. Also, Off the Bench podcast will go up as well. And be on the lookout for clips on social media. Give me a follow at StoneShields_. And we're going to start posting stuff on our the Stone Shield Show. There is a Twitter page for that. We'll start pushing that in a little bit. And you'll see more clips go up there now. But other things are being prioritized at the moment as we kind of get this show going and get it underway here as we are in the middle of week 2. Appreciate everyone that tuned in, and we will catch you here tomorrow on the Stone Shield Show. Take care, everybody.